that have some sort of light duty involved. So all sorts of different companies, lines of business, different needs. And we're trying to give them all the information they need to make informed decisions on their fleets going forward. In order to make informed decisions, there is analysis that needs to be done. You need to look at all of your vehicles in your fleet, look at the procurement process, procurement timelines, and then the way you get interested in those vehicles is that ride and drive Pete talked about as well. So that will come later this year. In order to have effective outreach, we need to reach out to all those different fleet partners in the Central Florida area. We'll be directly reaching out with fleet members and fleet engagement. We'll be fostering relationships with everybody in our OUC territory. We'll also be working with trade and freight associations as well. So NTEA, North American Council for Freight Efficiency, NACFE, Municipal Equipment Managers Association, MEMA, and others. There are all sorts of different good organizations out there that we would want to be a part of. If there are organizations that we haven't listed or you think should be a part of this and should be connected with, be happy to speak with them, speak with you about it afterwards, and I'll have some contact information to share at the end of this presentation. And again, this is all meant to be conversational. If anybody has a question or comment in the middle of this, please feel free, let us know. You can shout it out. You can use the question and answer feature in the webinar, and you can also use the chat feature as well. So happy to answer any questions that come through there. And this is part of the education piece. So we are working on designing and hosting several in-person workshops and online webinars, focusing on a lot of different things. Want to get a lot of information out there. This first one is best fleet vehicles and fleet electrification. We do want to go over things like charging, siting, and planning. That's a whole other side to electric vehicles. It's hard to run them without chargers where you need them. Utility coordination and electrical load management is a big one nobody thinks about, but OUC has thought about it. Procurement, leasing options, route logistics planning, maintenance, workforce development, driver training. There are all sorts of different topics we'd love to cover and get information out to those different fleet managers. Analysis, like I said before, we're going to be conducting drive tool initial analysis with fleets to identify immediate opportunities for EV consideration. We'll go over the drive tool a little bit later, but is the dashboard for rapid vehicle electrification. There is a quiz later, so remember that. I'm just kidding. We will also be providing telematics-based assessments later on for next stage fleets to provide more validation to EV processes and procurements. We'll be working on procurement, installation, maintenance opportunities where appropriate for charging, and coordinating directly with OUC and partners for electrical load management. And then all of that culminates in what Pete was talking about earlier, our ride and drive event scheduled for sometime around October, November of this calendar year. So we want to invite everybody under the sun, light, medium, heavy duty OEMs with a specific emphasis on light duty this year. We want to get electric vehicle upfitters, retrofitters, other aftermarket modification companies, EVSE charging manufacturers, software companies, telematics companies, and other fleet-aligned companies and organizations too. With that, we also want to create a take-home program that allows for longer duration test driving for those different fleet managers to validate EVs within their fleet. It's difficult to get interested in something if you don't have a chance to test it out first, so we want to try to create that opportunity. So that is all coming this year, but we also do want to make the point and create a lot of background information for those that don't have information about electrification. We do have a problem. And in this country, we are heavily dependent on an unstable oil market. We use 20% of daily oil demand, and with only 4% of the world's population, there are a lot of internal combustion engine vehicles out on the road today. And 92% of our transportation sector is dependent on gas and diesel. And it's responsible for about 70% of all U.S. petroleum consumption. There's a lot of it going on, and there's a lot we can do to switch it out, and it makes fiscal sense. And it makes fiscal sense because of an unstable market. These are manipulated by OPEC, and they never seem to be where you left them. We've all noticed over the last year or so how volatile the gas and diesel market can be. Changes constantly up and down. You can see this graph from 2000 all the way past 2020 into 2023. It's all over the place. But if you look carefully at that bottom line, the pink one right there, it is electricity. It has stayed lower than everything else, relatively speaking, and has stayed uh, relatively the same for many years on end. And it's all domestically produced. It's stayed low and consistent, and it stays away from price volatility. And electric mobility is one of the best scalable alternatives for reducing oil dependence. So it makes a whole lot of sense. But that is the background for electrification in general. And here's the background for EVs in general. Why do they make sense? They can aid us in our national security, get us away from our dependence on foreign oil. There are health benefits, getting rid of unnecessary chemicals in the air, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, all sorts of different stuff we don't need. There are environmental benefits, but the biggest one is cost savings. Total cost of ownership is definitely something to look into with electric vehicles. They make a lot of fiscal sense, especially owning them a couple years on end. We will get into more specifics on that. EVs cut costs, like I was saying. They cut costs and emissions. So all electric vehicles running entirely on electricity, like the Chevy Bolt, annual fuel costs would be $600, and annual emissions would be less than 2 metric tons. If you move to a plug-in hybrid that has a small battery but also runs on gasoline and can be plugged into a wall, those annual fuel costs are a little bit more, about $700 a year, and emit a little bit more as well, 3.1 metric tons. Not as good as a battery electric vehicle, but much better than the bottom line gas only. If you were to run just a Honda Civic, this isn't a SUV that everybody's used to running nowadays. Annual fuel costs are more than double a battery electric vehicle, and they emit 8 metric tons of carbon dioxide and carbon dioxide equivalent into the air every year. So there are a lot of things that make sense to get rid of gas cars and move to electric. And there are different types of electric vehicles. So the big difference between those first two, hybrid and plug-in hybrid, hybrids aren't really considered EVs. We've kind of moved on, and hybrids are a mix between a standard internal combustion engine or ICE engine and can use a battery to assist with fuel savings, but it can't be plugged into a wall. Plug-in hybrids can, so they do have their own electric motor. They can be plugged into the wall. They can usually drive themselves just on electric power and use gas as a backup. But battery electric vehicles are 100% battery. So they use that to store their electric energy on board, plug into the wall overnight, and you have zero tailpipe emissions that way since you don't have any sort of gasoline on board. And a lot of different examples. So hybrids, you've seen a bunch of them on the road for a long time. Toyota Corolla, the Prius has always been the big one. Sorento hybrid, Elantra hybrid, but plug-in hybrids, the Prius Prime is Toyota's plug-in hybrid, a little bit different from the standard Prius. Also the Crosstrek plug-in hybrid, Outlander plug-in hybrid. It'll have that gas cap near the back, and it'll have another cap for its electric plug location. And then your battery electric vehicles are the newer ones on the block, maybe look a little bit quirkier, flatter front noses since they don't need those same air intakes to cool internal combustion engines. So those would be things like the Leaf, the Bolt, and obviously every Tesla under the sun. Those are all BEVs, all battery electric vehicles. But all these battery electric vehicles need places to charge, and there are different ways to do it. You may have heard of level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 3 be direct current fast charging. So level 1 is your standard outlet in your house, 120 volts, 3-prong outlet. You can plug in your car that way, but if you plug in your car that way, 1 hour plugged into the wall it equates about 5 miles of range. So if you got a lot of time, it works in your garage. More often than not, if you're charging somewhere other than home, um, at home or in public, at school, at work, 240 volts is probably what you're used to seeing. So an hour plugged in at a 240 charger gives you about 25 to 45 miles of range. And then the bigger stations are DC fast. They're used at a bunch of different charging stations, and a lot of different companies are moving that direction as well. 10 minutes plugged in to a DC fast charger can get you about 40 plus miles of range, and some vehicles can charge from 15 to about 85% in about 30 minutes. The charging ports vary as well. So everything we have all runs off of three-prong outlets, and automakers are slowly making their way to having everything be very similar. So mostly everything now runs off of the J1772 and the CCS combo. If you take a look at those plug faces, they look very similar with the addition of the fast charging plug at the bottom of the CCS combo. Vehicles like the Bolt, the Ioniq, Kias, Volkswagen, and Ford electric vehicles all run off CCS combo. Tesla has their own thing, different face, but all their models run off of that as well. And there has been CHAdeMO, so that was being used by Nissan and Mitsubishi. A couple of others, they're still using that for a couple models, but they'll probably be moving more towards 1772 and CCS in the near future. And all these chargers can be networked or non-networked. So networked, they're smart chargers. They're connected to a bigger system. They're connected remotely to that larger network. And you can start and stop a charge. You can check on status. You can use a mobile app to use that charger. And non-networked are usually standalone units, not a part of a connected network. You can add one into your garage or to the outside of your business. And there's a lot of different vendors that supply EVSE equipment nowadays. ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America, Greenlots just got picked up by Shell. All sorts of different companies making all sorts of different options for all sorts of different use cases. So there's a lot of myths about EVs, and a lot of them are busted with good information. Myths like charging electric vehicles is inconvenient and there aren't enough charging stations, but it only takes a few seconds to plug in, and it can be pretty quick. Cars spend over 90% of their time parked, and if you fill up during typical downtime at home or at work, it makes a whole lot of sense. And DC fast chargers are, they make charging on long trips quick and convenient as well. Electric vehicles are too expensive for the average consumer. Well, EVs have cost more in the past. Battery costs are falling, and the used EV market is steadily growing. Used EV models can be found for significantly less than your average new vehicle, which is hovering over $40,000 nowadays. And also, electric vehicles aren't actually environmentally friendly because we burn fossil fuels to produce electricity. So even if electric vehicles were fueled by 100% coal, they would still cut on greenhouse gas emissions. That's because they use energy a lot more efficiently than traditional engines, and also because energy plants are always using cleaner technology. They're constantly improving, they're using scrubbers, and they're getting electricity from different sources as the years go on. And that leads us into the EV market. There's a lot of different examples. Some here, Chevy Bolt EUV, Solterra, Ioniq 5, Volkswagen ID4. There are over 40 battery electric vehicle options available in the United States today, and over 30 plug-in hybrid electric vehicle options available as well. So there's all sorts of different types, brands, and shapes to fit a lot of different use cases. And all these different companies are investing significant amounts of capital into electric vehicles, constantly improving them, and eventually shifting away from internal combustion engines altogether in the future. But there's a lot of cars and crossovers that are available now, and we realize that living in the States, trucks are important. There are trucks available, and there will be more trucks available in the very near future. So Chevy is coming out with a Silverado. You may have already seen the Ford F-150 Lightning out on the road. I know Pete is certainly excited about the OUC F-150 Lightnings that are already in the fleet. The Rivian R1T is available, and we've all heard about the Cybertruck. That one's hopefully coming maybe this year, maybe next year. We're all patiently waiting for that. And then there are medium and heavy duty options as well. They are a little bit more expensive than their standard counterparts, so they're not widely used just as of yet, but there are options, and there's a lot of R&D going into electrifying garbage trucks, electrifying street sweepers, smaller equipment, box trucks. Lynx has already used several different EV buses in downtown lanes, and then there are also electric school bus options as well. So everything that runs on a gas engine can be run on a battery electric platform. There are some barriers, though. There have been supply chain delays over the last couple of years. Obviously, COVID did not help us out a whole lot with that. There's been a lot of pent-up demand post-pandemic. There's been a lot of production delays due to manufacturing shutdowns in other countries, supply constraints, microchip shortages from those factory shutdowns in other countries, transportation constraints, inflation, price increases, and also an example, the Bolt. If you had an order placed in January, it was quoted at 8 to 10 months if the order gets accepted. So that is food for thought. If you or your fleet are thinking about electric vehicles now, it is best to look at getting them as soon as possible. Because if you delay your decision, your supply constraint delays will probably still be in the way. So if you have to wait for your vehicle, it'll come a little bit later, but don't put it off, because then you'll have to wait even longer to get your EV into your fleet. But those supply chain constraints have been around for a little bit. In July of 2020 was the 9th month in a row that new vehicle inventory fell, and it fell below 900,000 cars and trucks in the US. In 2019, new vehicle inventory averaged around 3.5 million vehicles. So over 3 times as many vehicles were available back then as opposed to now. And you can see some sparse lots. If you're driving down the street, see a dealership, they're parking them diagonally. They're not using every other space. They are doing all they can to make sure that those lots don't look empty when they are not nearly as full as they used to be. But those lack of new vehicles has caused dramatic increases in prices of used vehicles as well. It went up 42% from December of 19 to October of 2020. You guys have probably heard all sorts of different stories about the average price of new and used vehicles constantly climbing. And the inventory hit 1.3 million vehicles in November, and it's still rebounding. It's still rebounding. So slowly but surely, we're getting back to normal. It's going to be a while before we ever get to pre-pandemic levels, because back then, dealerships and OEMs were selling vehicles at discounts to sell them in volume. But for them, it does make a little bit more sense to keep a little less volume on their vehicle lots and sell them closer to their manufacturer's suggested retail price. And that leads to fleet planning. And that also involves total cost of ownership. So there's a lot of information that you need to know in order to make good decisions. And one of those is TCO. So if you only look at the upfront purchase price of an electric vehicle, it doesn't look like an affordable option right off the bat. But if you look at the total cost of ownership, the cost over fleet of a vehicle's entire life in your fleet, so purchase price, depreciation, fueling cost, maintenance cost, it makes a whole lot more sense. And it helps you better understand how much an asset will cost the fleet over time and make sense for more efficient vehicles. So like I said a little bit earlier, EVs cost more upfront. The 2023 Leaf is $28,000, so it's the lowest price EV on the market today. It's a little bit more than your standard hatchback, but if you look at your vehicle's price, plus electricity or gasoline to power it, maintenance and insurance, it's significantly less expensive over time to own that vehicle. So there at the bottom, years of ownership, 5 years. If you go more than that, it makes even more sense over time. And then vehicle cost, overall price parity projects by 2026 on upfront purchase prices of light-duty EVs, and many light-duty EVs are already in total cost of ownership payback before incentives. So this is showing the cumulative cost of ownership by year for a 22 F-150 Lightning and a 22 F-150 standard gas engine. So it goes up at a pretty steady rate to close to 5 years of ownership, and then it does start to level off. And then as you own the vehicle longer, you're paying significantly less over time for electricity than you would be paying for gasoline. And also those battery packs are going down in cost as well. We're in the EV phase similar to, it's kind of like an iPhone timeline. So you remember when everybody first got the iPhone 1, they were small, they weren't amazing, but the more iPhones that came out, the cheaper they got and the better they got over time. So in 2010, the price of a lithium-ion battery pack, volume weighted average, was pretty high, and it came down significant percentages over time. It will continue to stay low or lower in the coming years. Medium heavy duty vehicle costs. Medium heavy duty segment has traditionally been challenging to electrify because of its high energy requirements. It does take a lot of energy to move a lot of weight, but growing medium and heavy duty models on the market are continued decline in battery prices and increased support from policymakers are starting to bring medium and heavy duty vehicles into the mainstream. So they are coming. There's not a ton right now, but there will be in the very near future thanks to those lower battery prices. And that brings us to our drive tool. So what I mentioned earlier, the dashboard for rapid vehicle electrification. Standard fleet analysis can be costly, it can take a long time, and it can be difficult to interpret unless you're well-versed in those different programs. But through the drive tool, EC and Atlas Public Policy have created a free, accessible, and easy-to-use analysis tool that provides total cost of ownership information and other data in just a few minutes. Can integrate a number of different variables, including fuel costs, purchase prices, federal and state incentives, infrastructure costs, and more. There are a lot of inputs that go into the drive tool. So there are some things that fleet managers do need to curate in order to do solid analysis. You do need the VIN numbers for your fleets. So it is the most important piece of information for the drive tool, and it can't operate without it. But the tool uses a VIN decoder to pull specific information about the year, make, model, and specifications of every vehicle in the fleet. You will also need your annual vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, and that's just how far does each vehicle travel in a year. That could be estimated based on current mileage or a default value that can be used for all vehicles. And then also vehicle service life. How long does a vehicle typically stay in your fleet before replacement? But it can be estimated and input as default for all vehicles. And then this is what a dashboard looks like after analysis is done. It's an Excel-based tool, and it's designed to help identify cost savings that can be achieved by converting your fleet to electric. After you upload your information into this tool, it'll identify potential electric replacement models as well as potential internal combustion engine replacement models as well. It calculates the anticipated total cost of ownership for both potential replacement vehicles over their lifetimes based on how you use the current vehicle in your fleets. And then the results show both individual vehicle savings and anticipated savings in aggregate by vehicle class model. This is also an example of one of the other Drive Tools outputs. This is the vehicle summary tab, and it displays all the current VINs in your fleet, along with the ICE vehicle option it was mapped to, and the EV option it was mapped to as well. Shows the estimated total cost of ownership over each vehicle's life, as well as the likelihood of savings from transitioning to electric. So you have your EV average cost per mile, your original average, average saving percentages, and likelihood of savings from EVs. We see likely and very likely savings from EVs a lot while using the Drive tool. The Drive tool dashboard has a lot of different charts that can pop out for you. The first table shows the average lifetime cost of the vehicle per mile. You can see in a key on the right, the costs are included. In this example, the analysis included purchase price, which is the depreciation value, fuel costs, maintenance cost, but the drive analysis is customizable to include a number of additional costs. This visualization often helps outline, while some EVs are more costly up front, their efficient operation and low fuel and maintenance costs make them significantly less expensive in the long run. You can customize these tables using pivot tables in the dashboard to narrow in on specific vehicle use cases, models, or forecast future analysis years. And the Drive tool also generates an easy-to-read PDF that can be distributed to users outside of the Drive dashboard. These are a few example charts from that report, so you can get average cost per mile by use case, top 5 passenger vehicles to procure, top 100 vehicles to transition, and they show much of the same information, like average cost per mile per replacement vehicle type, in a quick and easy to understand format that anybody else can take a look at. But the Drive tool is a really good idea, creates a lot of very usable information. And this is a state agency example. Senate Bill 575 in Virginia was a measure signed by the governor there that orders many state agencies to buy or lease electric vehicles unless they can clearly indicate that the gas version is cheaper. Virginia lawmakers were divided along party lines during that session, but during this year's legislative session, they unanimously agreed on Bill 575. So it just goes to show you that using tools like these make things make a whole lot more sense. Maintenance, budgeting, and training. So in addition to using these tools to make informed decisions on what vehicles you should get, maintenance training may not be necessary due to low maintenance needs and warranties for electric vehicles, but it is something that maybe you should look into once you are getting into EVs. But they do have 40% lower costs in maintenance, and a new battery can cost anywhere between 5 and 10 grand depending on the original manufacturer, but almost all batteries have warranties of around 10 years. Training can also create comfort and familiarity with new technology for maintenance staff. And maintenance training can also encourage the development of a workforce capable of working on older EVs in the future, and it create buy-in from OEMs to know that fleets are investing in workforce skills. So not a whole lot to worry about for the time being. Those OEMs have solid warranties available for new EVs, but this will be a technology that's going to be around for a while longer. How to approach EV budgeting. There's a couple things we can do. We can determine what your organization's current budgeting and procurement process looks like. Also determine what departments and people need to be involved in fleet budgeting and procurement. It's best to establish an internal working group to create policies and systems that will make EV procurement easier. Best to implement a policy or system to encourage looking at the total cost of ownership for your fleets, and implement a policy or system to capture operational savings from efficient vehicles and create a pot of funding for future purchases as well. We do have a couple different case studies. So we have worked with cities in the past that have looked to electrify their fleets. Cincinnati, Ohio, their analysis showed that replacing 11 vehicles with EVs would save up to $150,000 in operational costs, and it would avoid over 1 million pounds of emissions over time. Purchased an additional 19 vehicles in 2020. We've also done work in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where they added 20 EVs to their fleet in 2020. And then they also achieved passage of their carbon neutrality plan. And in Des Moines, Iowa, different climate than we have down here, but it does discuss the success of fleets in below zero winters with frequent snowfall and occasional blizzards, and construction underway for a new facility that will support 160 electric vehicles. They've all had enough success with EVs to where Ohio has reallocated operational cost savings from EVs to capital procurement, increasing ability to purchase EVs. They've also implemented an EV first procurement policy that'll rapidly increase EV purchasing from a couple vehicles per year to 75 plus annually. Ann Arbor has also passed EV readiness ordinance in their city, and they continue to transition their fleet to electric. And in Iowa, they have also purchased an all-electric refuse hauler too. So there's all sorts of different use cases where electrification makes sense, and these locations continue to do it. Makes sense for both public and private fleets. Next steps. Next steps, you can do a little bit of homework. You can learn more about current EV models. There's several different websites where you can get all sorts of different information, like make, model, type, range, size of the battery, and MSRP at sites like shifttoelectric.com and evadoption.com/EV models. You can also go to the alternative fuel database. So aftc.energy.gov. You can take a look at all sorts of different vehicle types by manufacturer, light and medium and heavy duty, and engine type as well. A very easy to use tool that can step you through it every step of the way. And this is a big thing for the Electrification Coalition. This has been a big passion project, trying to break down IRA funding and all sorts of IRS guidance coming from new funding available for EVs and EVSE. All the funding available can make identifying and applying for proper funding seem a little daunting, but this tool helps eligible recipients sort through available federal funding for transportation electrification and helps recipients understand how investments can be matched. And it can also help users identify where technical assistance is available as well. Step-by-step process, who you represent, what you're looking for, what kind of funding you might be eligible for. And if you want to use that tool, just go to electrificationcoalition.org/EV funding finder. That is constantly being updated and constantly being adjusted based on the most up-to-date information. More things to start thinking about. So vehicle types, light duty versus heavy duty, what vehicles are in your fleets and what vehicles can you transition next? Think about your vehicle use cases. Are there any vehicles that have short common routes? Maybe there's an opportunity for vehicle right sizing. You can take two vehicles that maybe don't get used very often and procure one EV in their place that can be used for both of those roles. Where are the vehicles stored? Are they stored outside? Are they stored at homes of workers for your fleet? Are they stored at a depot? Are they stored at a building? Are any of those buildings up for construction soon? That gives a lot of opportunities to lay out EVSE and take a closer look at utility functions and how much electrification, how much electricity and load management you will need in the near future. And more things to do. Spread the word about this program. We've reached out to a lot of different people, but we know we haven't reached out to everybody. If there's anybody you can think of that works in the private fleet space, please tell them about this programming. We'd be happy to speak with them and happy to have them at all upcoming webinars and in-person events. We'd love to do some drive analysis for them and have them at that ride and drive event later this year. We do have some upcoming webinars and in-person events. So February 2020 and March 2022, we will send out invitations to all attendees today, and happy to have you on those upcoming events as well. Also, in the meantime, curate your fleet data for drive analysis. So get your VINs in hand, get your vehicle miles traveled, get your procurement schedules, all your ducks in a row, so then we can break that down and make more sense of it for you. And then also, like I said earlier, plan for our ride and drive event later this year, October and November. And if there are any other OEMs, manufacturers, organizations that you think should be a part of it, we'd be happy to speak with them as well. And again, I just want to thank you guys for spending the time. My name is Torrin Spencer, Senior Associate for the Electrification Coalition. My email is there, tspencer@ouc.com. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, be happy to talk with you and look forward to working with you guys in the near future.
So just to add to what, thank you, Torrin, by the way, just to add a couple of comments to what Torrin was saying. Part of OUC's strategy is to look at putting strategic charging hubs across our service territory. The first of which is going in 129 West Robinson. We'll have 20 high-speed charging stations there. The second will be at Orange County Convention Center. We're in conversation with both Four Routes and the Orlando Airport. But our intent is to place 8 across our service territory, and the reason is that we believe to effectively transition the light duty fleets for commercial and medium size duty, we need those charging stations so that you can take a vehicle that only has 125-mile range, and you can do opportunity charging if on the occasion that you need to go above 125 miles, you can do it and do it quickly. So rideshare is another fleet that we plan to entice to convert over to electric, and it's really important for them to be able to get in and get out quickly for a top off of charging. So I just wanted to make that let you know that that's in our plans. We hope to blanket the city with high-speed charging stations that will be used not only for our residential partners, but also for commercial vehicles. And also would like to open it up for questions. So if there are people that have questions, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Pete. And I know folks have the ability to come off mute, so absolutely either raise your hand or just pipe up or put them in the chat. But I have a couple here that we can kind of start with sort of for both of you. So one of those is, if I'm looking at my fleet and really getting started on this process, what vehicles should I start with in looking to go electric? What makes the best sense?
Well, the most sense right now is light duty vehicles. There are more options available as of right now. The procurement process might be a little bit shorter as well, be shorter to get it from the time you request from your local dealership to the time you get it. And it will also take a lot less electricity in order to charge it, so you may not need as much utility coordination and load management in order to figure out the best way to put in EVSE at your location. But it all depends on your use case. Depends on what you use that vehicle for. If it is for bigger jobs, you need a similar vehicle to what you already have. So that's why there are some EV trucks available. But if it is something smaller, if it is something like just driving workers from point A to point B, and it doesn't need to be a large vehicle, it may be worth the research to look into getting a smaller vehicle for that job?
Yeah, I would agree that the availability of the light duty is much better right now. It's going to get better as you move up the heavier vehicles. There are vehicle options all the way up to semis, but they are harder to come by as you go up, and the total cost of ownership is not quite as positive as you get heavier. So we'll see that drop as we go along, but that's why we're concentrating this first year on encouraging those light duty vehicles. Things like if you're Florida Hospital and you've got lab samples that you're sending around in a small hatchback, those are ideal vehicles for transition. I know that environmental companies like Massey have smaller vehicles that go job to job. Those are ideal vehicles for things like a small hatchback, like a Leaf, something along that lines. You can make a pretty good case for those.
And I saw somebody had raised their hand, so let me just pause here to see if somebody wanted to chime in.
Well, while we wait, Pete, I actually have a question for you. What type of planning should a fleet manager put into charging?
So the sooner the better. What we find is that it's not always extremely fast to be able to change the way power is brought to the building. So where your fleet is parked might be in a dirt lot that you're just using power for a light bulb and a computer. And that's not going to serve the fleet. So the sooner that we know that you're planning to transition, the better. And what we would do is put you in touch with our distribution and transmission folks here to look at capacity at the site and look at what we can do to improve it. What our hope is at the end of this ride and drive event, we're going to send you away with a package that says these are the vehicles that make sense for you. This is the power that you've got, your power capability at the site. This is the type of work that it would require. And this is the business case that you can probably present up to your CFO to say this makes sense for us to go ahead and make the transition.
Right. Thank you, Pete. Also, I wanted to see if John Slott was still with us. Wanted to see if he could give us any information on or insights about fleets converting to electric, and if there's any tax credits available that can help with costs, et cetera, and give us kind of like a good idea of what it's looking like out there right now. I think John might have jumped off early. That's okay. Charlie Mahoney, did you have a question?
I do, Torrin. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Hey, listen, it's that was not only a hand raised, it was also a high five, so I thought you'd been doing a great job. Full disclosure, I actually did sign on a little bit late. Knowing about the wave of EV that's coming and then the funding has been super helpful. Just and I may have missed this from earlier on EV, particularly from the Electrification Coalition. Is there resources? And again, pardon my ignorance on this, I have not done enough research. But is there a resource to assist with private entities, right? So my responsibility is actually truck upfitting. And while we do get some folks that are, they're fully invested because they're actually doing or providing the infrastructure, having the capability or understanding where businesses, not necessarily government entities. I love the government space. I want to make sure I highlight that because I've got a lot of customers. I come from that background in my former career, but the individuals that are with private organizations, are there resources within the Electrification Coalition to help promote adoption using these methods and that DRVE tool that you had highlighted?
Yeah, so let me see if I have your question correct. You're looking for funding for upfitters and other private companies, correct?
Actually, for the customers themselves. So again, kind of going back, one of the things that we do is really try to educate as we're going along. And hey, I realize that you need this, or whatever it might be within the scope of their work. But
yeah,
ideally,
so
it's like, here's your resource. Sorry. Good.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. And that is actually what we've put a ton of work into for this programming. We want to give all that information out in the coming months over this coming webinars and in-person events that we're having. But if you do have any questions in the meantime, that EC Funding Finder tool does help out with a lot of different use cases. So if someone were to come in, represent a city, rural area, school, freight shipper, advocate, business, nonprofit, individual, or a state, there are ways to find funding through that tool. And there are complementary drive analysis through this program as well. OUC sees the future business case for this, sees how it makes a lot of sense. So participating in any of these events coming up now through November is no cost to join, no cost to participate. OUC has helped out with all of that. So all the drive tools, all the drive tool that is coming up is complimentary. We just ask that you take a look at your fleet data, do your best to curate it in the meantime, and then we will have a future session where we run through how to use the drive tool, and then we can help assist and analyze those results after those fleets have used that tool.
Charlie, if you look in the chat, you're going to see a number of different links that will help you out. The first one is a link to the drive tool, which is used as a fleet analyzer. The second one is to the alternative fuel database, which can give you some ideas on the types of vehicles that exist. And then you're going to see the EV funding finder, which allows you to navigate and find really good opportunities for federal and state funding.
Amazing. Thanks, Pete. And big shout out to Matt Stevens. Rich actually worked with him when he was over at Clean Cities in Ohio. So many, many moons ago. But one other question. I was actually had a meeting with an OEM earlier today. We were talking a little bit about metrics and telematics. Has there been, and I may be putting the cart before the horse, but has there been any indication of potentially partnering with some of the OEM or the telematics suppliers today to integrate the drive tool into their environment where they're pulling data today to do an analysis or to help promote from the perspective of, hey, you might want to consider one of these versus an ICE.
So I don't know about holistically, but I do know that Geotab purchased Fleet Karma.
Yes.
Fleet Karma did have a product, an ODB compliant tool that plugs into the ODB port and analyzes your fleet. I think Geotab is still marketing that. So there's at least one fleet management tool out there that will analyze your fleet statistics and then do a comparative to provide you what's the best use case for that.
Yep, no, I appreciate that, Pete. Yeah, Eric Malley over there was hugely influential in getting Fleet Karma and Geotab together. So yeah, it's good stuff. It's great to see how everything's starting to piece itself together to get this movement to fruition.
Very much so. Thank you very much for your questions, Charlie. We have a couple minutes left. Anybody else have any more questions, comments, or concerns, even about upcoming events or the coming months? That's all right. If you do, we'll stay on for a few more minutes, answer a few more questions. But I wanted to thank you guys from the Electrification Coalition and Orlando Utilities Commission. Thank you for joining us for our first webinar. We were very much looking forward to seeing you guys in February and March. Again, if anybody has any questions regarding this programming or anything we talked about in the last hour, please feel free, email me at tspencer@ouc.com. And very much looking forward to seeing you guys in the future. Pete, anything from you?
No, we're happy to see you guys on board, and we're looking forward to working with you over the next year.
Awesome. Thank you very much, all, and have a good rest of your day.